Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Want to introduce you to Michael, a wonderful friend and a person that has been very vocal and active in the personal development, spiritual development world. And, Michael has a very interesting story. You have a multicultural upbringing, Malaysia, Singapore, and currently you're in Canada, but different projects spanning across the English-speaking world, in the US and Canada. Writing has been a big part of your journey. You mentioned it's one of your superpowers.
That's right.
You have written for over 5 years for success.com. You've also helped other writers, hone their craft and, get their work published. You also, that's one of the reasons I was attracted to your work was through your writing, because I read one of your blog posts and,
it was something like business lessons learned from washing dishes or something like that. Very Zen meets, practical startup world. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. It was Zen meets the practical world. And for me, it's resonated because at the time, I had just started learning meditation. And, I remember clearly I was trying to be more mindful of the tasks I was doing. And, and that included trivial things like washing dishes. And then I saw that article and I'm like, boom, other people are thinking about this. And
no coincidences, right? There was a reason that article got in front of you.
Actually, I wanted to talk about that too with you today, because, that speaks to some of your own philosophy with respect to the law of attraction, right, and all that stuff too. Yeah, and so, Mike has traveled extensively. He's worked in Africa, and he's done some philanthropic activities there. Of course, there are some interesting tales there of kidnappings, blah, blah, blah. It's like a mini Hollywood movie. And then currently, Mike is now helping entrepreneurs because he has also run multiple businesses over the years, some successful, some not successful, lessons learned overall. And now he's, at a point where he's sharing some of that knowledge with others to hone their craft. But would it be fair to say that the theme running through all of this is personal development and spiritual development, and that you apply that even to people that come to you for business coaching?
Yeah, that's been really the theme of my life and the most interesting, pursuit of my life. And first I want to say, man, it's good to see you, brother Soban. It's been a while now. You've been to my wedding. We've had lots of adventures. It's been wonderful spending time with you, getting to know you and being your friend, because you are one of the most thoughtful, introspective, philosophical people that I know, and all in a very, very good way. And you are in a way my teacher. So thanks, Soban, for doing this. Back to your question. That would be what I'm most interested in. Of course, we live one foot in the practical material world, but we live another foot in the realm of non-materialism, right? We have these, I think we have some kind of soul. I believe that we're on some kind of journey where we're here to learn lessons. And even if you don't believe in a higher power, why wouldn't you adopt the philosophy that you're here to become the best person you can be, to fully step into your power, to become your potential, right? And to do amazing things with your life, right? Rather than live at some lower level. So that would be why I get up in the morning.
Oh, that's great. And to me that resonates because it also aligns with the, fundamental notion of the evolution of the world, of people, of humanity, of our species, and it seems that you have kind of almost taken that as your operating principle, to evolve continuously and to learn and adapt and also to share with the world.
Yes. Yeah, well, not to put a negative spin on this stuff, but I do believe that everything that's living in the world, if it's not growing, it's dying, right? There's no in between state. There's no stasis where things are just steady state, right? Status quo is pretty dangerous, and so I've adopted that principle in my life that I always want to be growing and learning and evolving, not in a way that's I got to be better than who I am. It's not an anxiety based, like I better keep moving like a shark or I'll die. But like, I'm interested and curious and enthusiastic about going to the next level constantly. And there are no upper limits. There is no final level. There's no destination. It's all a journey, and it's a lot of fun. And I think if you make this a pursuit of yours, you can generate a lot of both happiness and success, material or otherwise.
Well, that's very interesting because this space of personal development, spiritual development is obviously full of all kinds of different personalities and ideas, ranging from like completely, like you have like the extremely charismatic spiritual leaders, telling you to and then on the other hand, you have the complete Zen and meditation type, very calm people, right? And everything in between. And which
is wonderful.
Which is wonderful.
That diversity is what we need, because everyone needs something different to evolve. We're not all on the same path. We some people, they need to chase money and pursue that, and some people need to have relationships that fail and to learn that lesson, whatever it is. So yeah, we need a diversity of teachers and everyone is a teacher and a student.
So I guess you're saying that it depends on your attitude. You can learn from anyone.
I believe you can learn from anyone. One of my greatest teachers right now is my 3-year-old daughter. I mean, she is teaching me about joy and spontaneity and compassion and patience and the meaning of true love. And she's not trying to teach, but she has a wealth of things to offer me. And so does the stranger who I pass on the street and I exchange a nod or a glance with. That person has something to teach me. It's there's no limit to what you can learn if you're paying attention.
That's powerful, man. There's multiple different awesome portals that you've just opened. So I don't know which one to step through. Because you've talked about patience, you've talked about attending to things, attention and focus, and also, the idea that, like learning is not how we have always conceived it to be, something in the classroom or something in a very formal setting, And in fact, right. I would say that even perhaps the classroom learning is inferior to the kind of like life learning that you're describing,
Yeah, I would say it's not a controversial statement that a lot of educational systems everywhere are deficient. They often teach us that we need to perform a certain set of tasks in a certain order in order to be successful. And really, we put a lot of weight on the testing and have you memorize this thing. I remember reading the book, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. And,
I love that book.
He's a wonderful.
Feynman is amazing.
He's a great example of a human being. Yeah, and there was this one scene in there where he's a brilliant physicist and he's a mathematician. He's speaking to these. He was a guest professor at a university in Brazil somewhere, I believe, and he was giving this keynote speech to the faculty and the students, and he was saying, I think your university has a major problem. Because and I'm summarizing greatly, but your university has a problem because your students have memorized all of these things. They know how to say the right words, but they don't understand the concepts. And I think that's the deficiency with most school systems, especially in the West. They're teaching you the concepts, they'll teach you how to memorize your multiplication tables, but not to actually understand the concept of multiplication. Maybe that's a poor example because I think they do a pretty good job of that. But there's firstly that deficiency where we're not teaching people the process of thinking, and of course there's the second deficiency, which is there's huge gaps in the subject matter. Right? We don't teach the principles of wealth. We don't teach people how to get wealthy. We teach people how to work in a 9 to 5 in the corporate world mostly, right? We don't teach people how to be happy. We don't teach people how to be creative generally, and to solve problems and to manage your thoughts and your internal mental state. And I think things are changing a little bit. You look at places like Finland, where they've done away with grades and they've done away with subjects. It's about experiential learning. I don't know too much about this, but it seems they're doing better than us. So there's reason for hope, but essentially much of our educational systems have been stuck in the 1800s. So it's an opportunity to improve. And to just add to that, yeah, the real world is probably the best teacher. I went and I got an undergrad and a master's degree, and I appreciate that I had that experience and I was taught how to think in a certain way. But I can say for sure I've learned the bulk of my knowledge and wisdom since the time I left school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fascinating. I just wanted to share a story with respect to that. You mentioned Feynman, and you mentioned how, I don't know exactly remember that story about Brazil, but it reminds me of another story that he mentions about his father. When he's really young, his father takes him out to, they're having a walk or something. And I think I'm also probably came to my mind because you mentioned your daughter, and they're on a walk, and and Feynman asks his dad, what's that? And he sees a bird or something like that, and the father goes, it's a blah, blah, blah. So he says the name in English, whatever bird it is. Then he says it in another language, then another language, and another language. He lists a whole bunch of names of languages. And then he's like, you know what, son, after you've learned all these names, you haven't learned the first thing about the bird, because which is that the bird isn't the symbols that we use to represent it in language. It's its own entity. And in other words, what you're saying is that we are taught the names of things. We are taught, this is what, but we don't understand the underlying concepts. And I feel like a lot of that doesn't come without the sort of experience you're describing, because, Aristotle, I think he said that learning is not child's play. There's always some pain involved, and that sounds like very, I don't want to do that. Like we're living in a culture where we want to run away from pain, right? And but it seems that pain is a signal to help us learn and improve. So in your life, how is that pain? Because I know that at the time when you were even you're younger, you were a very outgoing, partying kind of person, which is not the persona you have now, right? So, well, there must have been some pain there that allowed you to then, pay attention and reflect and.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, nobody who's alive for a period of time does not experience pain. It comes with the experience of being human, and it's a very useful tool and teacher. Yes, most people want to run away from pain, but it's only through pain and the associated challenge of that pain that we learn and grow, right? That sounds like a cliche, but that's really one of the fundamental principles of life, is that if we want to evolve, if we want to grow, we want to experience some pain, right? We're going to experience it anyway. The question is, how do you use that, right? I mean, there is, you can come up with an image. I think this is maybe from the Stoics, that, when someone, demolishes your house and it's kindling, well, you can use that kindling to build a fire to restart your life. And you use it's like photography, you use the negative to develop, right? I'm full of cliches here, but this is how we learn, right? And yes, I've had a ton of pain in my life, like most people, including, a challenging relationship with my father. I've lost both my parents. I started drinking at 15 and really didn't stop until about last year, quite heavily drinking. Relationships that were painful. There was, I'm lucky to have had lots of wonderful, beautiful love in my life, relationships, romantic ones and otherwise. But there's always some pain associated with relationships, because I think the function of a relationship is to learn, to create some pain there in some cases, so that you will learn, right? And I also believe that when you learn the lesson from a challenge, you'll get better challenges or new challenges, right? But if you don't learn the lesson, you'll keep repeating that same mistake. So, for example, a lot of people are saying, why do I keep attracting the same guy into my life, right? If it's a romantic relationship. And the reason is because there's something you haven't learned there about this situation, right? Maybe you have a challenging view of your own self-worth, and you keep attracting a person who is going to berate you or abuse you because you believe subconsciously that that is what you deserve, right? And so the lesson is, well, it could be many things, but one of the lessons might be, it's time for me to start choosing a more healthy self-worth, self-esteem. And in that way, I'm going to stop allowing these people who are going to hurt me into my life, for example.
Man, that's so fascinating, because it touches on another massive, like Pandora's box, which is, this conflict between your conscious and subconscious, which doesn't necessarily always has to be a conflict, but, for a lot of people, like, we want to go in a certain direction, whereas like our unconscious, or, maybe the amygdala, or whatever terminology we use, is going the other way. The ant is riding the elephant, and it thinks it's going the other way, but it doesn't matter because the elephant's walking that way.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I find fascinating is that like people will keep sabotaging their progress, and as a coach, you probably noticed that. I mean,
this is my work. Yes, it's
So please shed some light on that.
So, all right, my title is business coach, right? And so I've chosen to work with entrepreneurs and business owners because I've built 6 businesses now. As you said, some were successful, some were less than successful financially, but I've chosen that area. But really, I'm working with humans, right? And so we all have this nature and operating systems, and the basis of all operating systems in a human is a belief system, right? So we all have beliefs about everything: money, love, relationships, the weather. We all have beliefs, and that is what creates our reality, right? This is really the fundamental message of the law of attraction, which I've been diving into voraciously. I've been reading all kinds of books about law of attraction, which essentially states this: what you think is what you get. And you can have different beliefs about whether there's some mystical principle happening, or this is just your neurochemistry. But basically, what you think is what you get. And this is the message of many of the world's major religions, the world's most famous spiritual teachers, including Jesus, Muhammad, the Buddha, Lao Tzu. What you think is what you get. And this is what I do in my coaching work all the time. I look at what people believe, and I help them choose more empowering beliefs. So for example, a 1-hour coaching session with someone, and I just lost your video.
That's okay. Continue, please.
On a 1-hour coaching session with someone, I'm mostly listening, right? I'm listening for the things that people say that are not helping them get what they want. So an example could be, I've got to work really hard to build this business, or anything in life. I don't overcome procrastination unless I'm stressed. So I have to create a crisis in order to move forward. Right? These are some actual examples from clients. Those things are not serving those people, right? So the question now becomes, how can we choose a more empowering belief, right? And a more empowering belief, it might be, I don't have to work hard to make a lot of money, because it's true. It's what I believe anyway, and I'm proving it. There are great women out there, or men. I can be healthy. It's easy to be fit, right? Those are empowering beliefs that a lot of people don't have, right? Or they're choosing beliefs that don't empower them. And so my job is really to be like a mirror to show people what they're creating in their life, right? Back to law of attraction: what you think about, you create. Right. So if you keep saying, I'm fat, for example, or I'm unhealthy, or I'm poor, whether you say that out loud or subconsciously, you'll be creating that situation.
Well, the first thing I'm hearing from you is that sounds like incredibly challenging work, given that to change someone's beliefs, right? Because that's something that not only acquired over the years, but it's at the basis of their, like you said, reality. So like you would like changing it, like immediately would be like taking the rug out of their, feet,
Changing it immediately is not what I go for, right? It's usually gradual change. Most people, if they were to shift their belief system immediately, they would maybe, be in a very not so great place. They would they would not be ready to handle the new lifestyle, right? But however, I also believe you can change your belief system in an instant. If you've been thinking for years, life is hard, you can choose tomorrow in this moment to say, actually, life is not that hard. Or maybe you don't get there right away, but you choose some bridging beliefs. You say something like, I don't have to struggle anymore. You can say something like, sometimes life is easy.
Yeah, that's
or you
powerful.
you can say, I wish to believe that that things are coming easily to me, right? Small little steps. And for the most part, I don't consider it challenging work. I really love what I do. And it's not like I'm trying to force people to become who they want to be. I'm only trying to help people see the reality of their current situation, what they're creating in their life, right? Which is usually not what they want. People come to me because they have things in their life that they don't want, challenges, or they have goals that they really want, which is, your ideal vision for your life. And I just help people see what is this scenario now and where do we want to go, right? And help people get clear on that vision. And then I become a keeper of the vision, and I keep moving people back to that, where they want to go, right? It's the carrot versus the stick. We don't want to talk about the negative aspects of your life. We want to focus on what could be possible and what you can create in your life. So yeah, it's not challenging work. It's wonderful work. Of course, it depends on the willingness of the client, but most people that come to me, they're ready for a change.
That's very interesting. So they are ready for change, and then you help them refocus their energies, their attention, and then you also provide ongoing accountability and bringing them back to those principles that will lead to their progress versus ones that are sabotaging them.
Yeah, accountability is a key part of the coaching relationship. And I'll just briefly tell you how I got into this. So around the time I was 21 or 22, I went to see she calls herself a counselor, but I can call her a coach. And she helped me through various things, relationship challenges and, career challenges. And I worked with her for several years and lost track of her, but recently started working with her again. It's been a wonderful experience. In the interim, I worked with probably another 4 or 5 coaches. And so I've had amazing coaches in my life through not unofficial, but I've paid these people to help me. And the results are always amazing, right? They're not maybe immediate, and they're not perhaps, breakthroughs, but they change the course of your life in a way that you're going to now go in a direction you want to go instead of going in the direction you don't want to go, right? So that's what I do. And I'll meet with clients every couple of weeks for an hour, and we just talk. We talk and we do exercises, and I bring all the tools that I have to bear, and I help people see the reality of where they are versus where they want to go.
Okay, so you provide that bridging sort of the fact that they're here and they want to be here, but they need that guidance to get them through to the other side.
You got it. Yeah. So if, for example, I have a client who has a small business with his wife, and they've been attracting smaller clients that are not paying the bills. They want to be working with bigger, maybe corporate clients. They want to work with corporations, charities, and political candidates. And so I'm helping them, first of all, get clear on who it is they want to work with and drill down on what those attributes are, then how to find them. Then, the minimum that they want to work for, it's no longer $1,000 jobs, it's $5,000 jobs. And they've got one in the first 3 months. And so I help clarify, all right, what's the belief here that is holding you back? And in this case, it was something like, we have to start small. We have to start doing these jobs that we don't appreciate, that we don't like, in order to build our reputation. But I'm showing them how, no, you don't have to do that. You can start immediately for going for the client that you want, right? For example, luxury brands, they didn't start by working with, budget shoppers and then work their way up. They start by targeting luxury clients. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, and this applies to any type of product or service you can think of. And so it's vision is number one. Always we start with why. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to be in business? And it's never just for the money. That's there's always something deeper. Why and your vision, then clarity on your client, who is your ideal client that you can serve at the highest level, right? Because when you are passionate about the work you're doing and you truly serve, that's when money comes to you. That's how you create abundance. And then we get into nuts and bolts, like how to create a value proposition, a website, how to do sales and marketing, all that stuff. But really it's 80% the mindset and only 20% the nuts and bolts or the habits.
Okay. So yeah. You take their operating system and you make the necessary iterations so that like the other part, the nuts and bolts, are then a lot easier, because once the operating system's in place, then they can install the relevant software. But without the operating system, Windows 95 can't run, to make a reference to your computer business that you did many years ago. So.
Yeah, that's right. I started this entrepreneurial journey of my own when I was 20 or 22 or something like that. And I would fix computers for about $40 an hour. I would go to people's houses, and like mostly it was Windows 95, 98, 95 had been running for so many years. It was just bogged down. So I just wipe everything and start over, right? It was a very easy job, but I paid my way through university, which was awesome. And I started to see the value and the power in being an entrepreneur and being your own boss. The freedom, I think, was the most attractive to me, that I could work whenever and for how long I want and with whom I want. And the second thing was the unlimited, there was no cap on your earning potential, right? I could charge what I want and I could make what I want. And I've learned since then that you can scale yourself, you can use automation, or you can delegate, you can hire people, you can do, group coaching programs in my case. And so it's very appealing to me to be the captain of my own ship. And so back to your question, it is a lot about helping people choose their operating system. To clarify, I'm not choosing anybody's operating system. I'm helping them decide who they want to be, right? So I'm not an advice giver. I'm not a mentor. I'm a coach who helps you get the innate wisdom out from inside of you.
Fascinating. So it's you're literally just bringing their attributes that are already there, but not that just hidden perhaps from their own view, blind spots, and then bring it. It's like Plato, I think. He said you can never teach anybody anything. You just let them learn. Like, in other words, like he has an entire dialogue where he shows how this person says, I don't know this whatever math problem or something, and he's like, no, he's putting all the words in Socrates' mouth, and then eventually at the end of the dialogue you see that the guy already knows what he's talking about, but he just had to go through this process of questioning and dialogue. That's right. To get, so
Plato nailed it, right? And I suppose I'm doing a bit of that in my coaching work. The sports analogy is helpful here. In basketball or any sport, you have a coach. Obviously every team needs a coach, right? Or multiple coaches. And it's not that the coach is the best player. He's not the best at basketball, but he or she is the person that is the best at getting the results or the potential out of the players, right? So it's not as if, the coach is imparting some skill to the players. It's just that the coach is unlocking the lock, right?
Yeah. And then that's very important, because like we said, like for a lot of people, their subconscious is sabotaging their conscious, because like you said, the belief source, that the person wants the bigger client, but the underlying belief structure says, no, but first we must go after these like smaller ones, because it's trying to keep you safe ultimately, right? That's the right process of evolution. Like the first foremost thing for your primitive part of your body is to just keep you alive, to keep you safe, to put you in front of these people that you might get embarrassed because they're like, you might not think you're good enough for it. And so by assisting them overcome these beliefs, you unleash a potential that's within them that was previously unknown to them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you're right. There's a lot of programming in us that tries to keep us safe. It's a part of our evolutionary past where we lived in the world that was going to kill us in many, many ways, right? And in fact, the human, Homo sapiens were almost wiped out in I think one of the ice ages or whatnot. There were only like 1,000 of us left, or maybe less. And, so of course we have this programming that tries to keep us safe, right? The most of the apparatus up here is for survival, right? And so we live now in a world that is mostly safe. There's a very strong argument that we live in the safest time in history, that, most things won't kill us. We're extremely structured in Canada and the United States with rules and protections. So that evolutionary apparatus is not really serving us anymore, because we are well beyond survival, most of us, right? Well, far beyond survival. We're even beyond comfort, most of us. A lot of us are thriving, right? At least at times. And so we are lucky though, because it's the part of the brain, the emotional part, the limbic system, that's the one that is operating us on emotion, right? Right. But we also have this wonderful cerebral cortex, which is where our logic and things like that live. And we can use that to give new operating instructions to the subconscious, right? Most of our thinking, I believe, and I think research supports this, happens in the subconscious. It's like 90% or more, right? So every decision we make, for example, is driven first by emotion. We rationalize it backwards with our intellect and our logic, right? But mostly we're operating on emotion. And in the vast majority of people's cases, that's not helpful programming. We are doing the fear-based stuff. We're thinking luck. We're thinking scarcity. We're thinking risk is going to be dangerous. We're thinking talking to that beautiful woman is going to embarrass us and get us kicked out of the tribe, right? So that stuff drives us whether we are aware of it or not. And so I think in part the practice of coaching, and also I think a lot of the purpose of life is to make some of these subconscious things conscious. I think Jung said something like that until you make the subconscious conscious, it will continue to run your life and you will call it fate.
Yes, exactly. That's Jung,
something like that. Yeah. Yes. So that's kind of where I operate, is in that space of the subconscious and helping people see the things that they can't see. And this is important because, back to law of attraction, what you think is what you get. You are always manifesting, whether you know it or not. And so if you think something like, don't fuck up, you're going to fuck up, because that's the message that you're putting out to your consciousness and to the universe. So if you think something like, this has to work, you're bringing an energy of panic and maybe doubt. You're creating doubt and panic in your life. This thing you're trying to get to work will not work, right? So we need to rewire our subconsciouses and choose different beliefs in order to get what we want.
Yes, that's very good, man. When you were talking, it reminded me of this character, Albert Ellis. I'm not sure if you've ever heard the name.
Rings a bell.
Okay, he was you must have heard of CBT, right? The cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah,
of course.
Right. So this is considered like the kind of the originator. Well, a lot of people will point to Aaron Beck as the originator, but he was kind of like, he preceded that. Like his therapy was called rational emotive behavioral therapy, which is pretty much where CBT derives from many of its principles. So one of the things that he was really, really focused on, is it aligns with what you're saying, is that, he would always his main idea was that most of our emotional upsetness comes from some very simple things, such as us, telling ourselves, oh, I should have this, or she shouldn't do this, or he must not, and so he would like jokingly call it like, humans are really good at shooting their pants. Yes. And they just, and then another one he would teach his clients would be, masturbation is good, but masturbation is bad. Stop. So people would say, oh, I must, and so that the fact that he reminded, it brings that panicky energy, right? So the alternative he would present would be, you can say, I would really like this to be the case. I would really want this to be the case. I wish this was the case, and then these things would lead you towards that. So what I'm hearing from you is that a lot of people lack the kind of gentle, loving tug that you need. Like, I was reading this book from Ray Dalio. I really like that book called Principles. And he always talks about that in order for you to change your subconscious, you have to almost talk to it like you're talking to a kid in a loving, kind, but persistent manner. You know, and so in some ways, what I'm hearing is that you as a coach, people get that benefit of you talking to them in a loving, kind way, but in a persistent way, to bring them away from those beliefs that they might themselves find it difficult to steer away from. But eventually, after hearing you and interacting with you for a while, then that chip gets installed, and now they can learn to eventually, they can be free and they can do it on their own. But the value you bring is to get them started and to help them along the journey at certain junctures where it's very, very relevant for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I approach hopefully all of my interactions, not just my coaching, with compassion and kindness. That's a very big, important value of mine. There's a lack of it in the world, as you know, and it starts with a lack of compassion for ourselves. So if, there's a saying, hurt people. People who are hurting hurt others, right? And that is really the cause of all strife and pain and war in the world, is that we don't have a very good relationship with ourselves, right? If we were to stop worrying about what everyone else is doing and focus on ourselves, if everyone in the world could do that and start cultivating love and self-esteem and self-kindness and self-care, I would say, I don't think I'm being extreme here, but I think all of our problems would go away as a society and as individuals. If we could all, and it comes back to love. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. If we would all just love ourselves, we could then love each other, and we wouldn't have all these, we wouldn't have imposter syndrome. We wouldn't have gaslighting. We wouldn't have shaming or bullying or violence or war, right? There would be none of that stuff, because we wouldn't have to act out in that way, right? Anger, for example. Anger, I've learned, is always a mask for hurt. Fear and hurt, right? When people are really hurt, they're usually the most angry. They can channel in different ways too, into depression or whatever, but usually the source is hurt. And I think, Mr. Ellis is right about masturbating. Language is so important. The language we use with ourselves can make or break our day and our life, right? So you talked about this different nuances. Shoulding ourselves. Should is terrible. I try to never use the word should. Probably one of the worst things you can say to yourself is I have to, right? Because Soban, how do you feel when you say I have to do this? Not good, right? I have to do this. It becomes a chore. It becomes like that's associated with survival mentality. I have to go out and find food or my family's going to die, right? I have to go get a job or I won't be able to pay my rent. You never feel good in those moments, right? Whereas if you move up the scale, you can say something like, I want to do this, but that's not perfect either, because now want has a type of lack associated with want, points at what's missing, right? And that creates a little bit of anxiety and fear as well. But if you move up the scale, you say something like, I would love to, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And wouldn't everyone want to live their life from things they would love to do, right? So I would love to go get a job and provide for my family. I would love to go share my talents with the world. I would love to get paid to do this thing. I would love to travel the world. I would love to create a life of abundance and joy and peace and passion and serenity and experience, right? That's a wonderful place to be. And I do help my clients catch the words that they use that are not helpful and install better language. Yeah.
That's very fascinating, because the way they use their language also betrays to you what they truly believe underneath in their minds.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear it almost immediately when the words someone uses. After 5 minutes, I can tell you what is their general emotional state, right? Where's their emotional home? Is it fear? Is it doubt? Is it frustration? I can hear that after 5 minutes of listening to somebody based on the words that they use.
Yeah, it's interesting how you can get those insights really fast, but obviously it takes a long time for people to catch up to those insights themselves. Otherwise, all the business coaches would be out of you know what I mean? Like if that's why like a lot of like psychodynamic therapy, like back in the day, like Freudian therapy, like a lot of it was insight based. They would try to give the patient insight. But like repeatedly, people found out through research is that giving people the insight into how they're operating doesn't solve necessarily the problem. So
Yes.
until they eventually start to realize it through interactions with you. And I think that also the way you speak to them also probably models a certain kind of behavior pattern that they can then apply. It goes back to what you were talking in the beginning, experiential learning. Because it's not just what you say to them, it's how you interact with them is probably also a source of learning for your clients. Because they feel that kindness, that compassion, that like that you bring, that love that you bring to the relationship.
Yeah, there is a part of that going on for sure. I think, a little bit of what I do is modeling for clients a different way to think, especially a different way to live also. When I tell clients that, I work about 5 hours a day, sometimes less. I think some of them are shocked. They're like, "What?" And I have no lack of material abundance in my life. I have a coach friend who just made $500,000 last year, Canadian, was still about 400 US, and she works 2 to 3 hours a day, and she's amazing. She's an inspiration for me. And that's the thing. Like, if hard work were sufficient to bring you all the wealth that you wanted, then every woman in Africa would be a billionaire, because they have usually the hardest lot in life, right? Hard work is not sufficient. In fact, the whole concept of hard work is a little bit silly. Why would you want to work hard? Wouldn't you rather work with joy, with passion, with enthusiasm, right? What does hard work get you? I mean, it got me very little in the previous years. Sure, you can build a business with hard work, but you're probably going to be stressed out and maxed out and not have time for socializing and maybe your health. Hard work, you can build a business, but you're not going to be happy. If you want to build a thriving business or do anything in life that is thriving, you want to work with joy. And so I'm doing something different this year, which, every year and I've done this for about 12 years. On January 1st, I sit down and I make a list. I do what I call my yearly planning process. And that includes a review of the previous year and look ahead to the future year, what I want to accomplish, what I want to choose for emotions and experiences. And this past January, I chose feeling good and having fun as my dual top priorities. Why is that, right? And it's not just because I want to mess around with my life. Feeling good and having fun are actually prerequisites to doing amazing work in the world, right? Passion and enthusiasm, those are very important. And you will feel those if you feel good. If I feel good, I can manifest and create good things in my life. If I have fun, I'm going to have more energy and enthusiasm, and I won't be so tired all the time, right? A lot of people are tired, not because of their diet, not because of their fitness routines, but because they're just not enthusiastic about life, right? People who are enthusiastic about life run circles around everyone else, right? Mm-hmm. And you can try to push yourself, sleep 5 hours a night, it's not going to be sustainable. So the other thing you mentioned was, about how clients will know something and still not apply it. Yeah, I think that's because there's a fundamental difference between head knowing and heart knowing, right? I can read a book and I can read about a concept and I say, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? But that is not yet installed in my subconscious. It's not in my bones, right? You got to get that knowing into your bones. And usually you can do this through there's two ways. There's either repetition, over just, tell yourself this over and over again, or you do it in a period of heightened emotion. So the way I quit smoking, for example, was I just woke up one day and I said, I think today's the day I quit smoking. This was 10 years ago. And I got myself really into a charged state. I was, yelling and screaming in my living room. I was saying no more. And I took those cigarettes and I threw them in the garbage, and I never had a cigarette since then. And that was the power of heightened emotions. So yeah, but it took me getting that, knowing that smoking was bullshit, and installing it in my subconscious, in my bones, in my gut.
Okay, so you're suggesting that two different ways to influence your subconscious. One is through repetition, as the other one is through utilizing strong emotions, because that's the language of the subconscious. So it's utilizing those two. You can either build good habits or eradicate ones that are not serving you.
You got it. And to go back to the emotional point, so most people, they get to a certain age and they fall in love, they spend some time with this person, and then it ends, right? And that breakup is usually incredibly painful. In my case, it was the end of the world. I still have lingering feelings and triggers from a relationship that ended 20 years ago, right? But I appreciate that. I welcome that, because it is in these experiences of heightened emotion, when your heart's broken, you can let things in, right? There's a saying like, the light enters where the heart's been broken, right? It's a bit cliche again, but it's so true.
The light enters where the wound
is. You got it.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's so true. Of course, nobody wants to have their heart broken, but the reality is, it's a wonderful thing. It's wonderful. I learned so much from my two previous major losses in love, and it allowed me to become the person that I needed to be to meet my current wife, right? Who I've been with for 10 years now. And if I hadn't had those experiences, there would be no possibility of this growth, this connection with my wife. So yeah, that's the power of when you are in an emotional state, you can adopt new beliefs, you can change. And it doesn't require a breakup. It could be any, grief or loss, or just firing yourself up, when you're really excited, in the positive direction, when you're really excited or happy or joyful, you can make changes, right? Let's say you go on a beautiful vacation and you're sitting on top of a mountain looking at the sunset, and that's bringing up all these really powerful feelings of joy. That's a perfect time to choose new belief systems about your life and a new way to live. And that's why I think it's important to get out of your environment, go on vacation, and think about your life.
Yeah, and I would say that, like, in my experience, even negative emotions can be utilized in the same way, right? Like even if, like, you're really pissed off or angry at something that you've done again that you thought you'd never do again, and you're, like, really upset, giving yourself a powerful pep talk at that time has sometimes allowed me to eradicate a habit that I wasn't able to do otherwise. It was just like a very negative, strong emotional state. I was so upset with myself, and then never again, and then anytime, if I ever even think about acting that way, that negative emotion is so salient in the memory that I'm like, oh, no, not doing that, So
yes, because you trained yourself to be aware of these behaviors or these situations, and now you're saying, I want to do it differently, and you're aware. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then that I want to connect that to the beginning of the conversation where you talked about pain, right? And how that gives you the opportunity, because you just mentioned your relationship pain. If you can find the time to reflect, either while the pain is going on or later on, you're suggesting that will lead to evolution, that will lead to progress. Whereas if you don't, you will continue to get the same lesson until you finally either grasp it, or you die away, or, like, just wither away,
I do believe that. So, and I see this in my coaching clients as well, the people that don't get the lesson, they don't learn from the lesson, they continue to repeat the same mistakes, right? And I'm guilty of this too. For years, one of my lessons was, you've got to ask for help. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, that is the quickest route to success, is asking for help and working with a team, delegating, hiring people, asking, getting mentors, coaches, whatever support you can find. I didn't do that. I was determined, I'm going to do it on my own, right? Because that's the message we get from our Western society, is that the individual is paramount, and that we have to be self-sufficient and tough. Strength is the number one quality. It's not. And that you have to forge ahead on your own. Whereas that's not helpful, right? If you want to do anything in life, you must collaborate and lean on people. And so I started a few businesses that I kept trying to do it on my own, and I did not see the kind of success at the level I wanted. It was only when I started asking for help, collaborating, that I had a breakthrough. So yeah, it's super important. And yeah, negative emotions are your teachers. There's, and it doesn't have to be a extremely powerful loss or trauma. It can simply be, in this moment, I feel uncomfortable. That's a messenger, right? Your emotions are your emotional guidance system. If you feel good, you're moving in the right direction. If you feel not so good, you're moving in the wrong direction. or another way to say this is, if you feel good, you have adopted good thoughts and beliefs. If you don't feel good, you've adopted bad thoughts and beliefs, right? So, yes, in every moment, in every second of your day, you can use these negative emotions as guides or teachers, and to choose a different path. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man. I was going to say that, I think there's a value to doing that individual work too. Like, I'm not saying that you're suggesting that, but it's like some people are too much on that one side where it's like all about just like, okay, like it's all me and I got to figure this out and can't get help. And I think a lot of men, we are guilty of that perhaps.
For sure.
And on the other hand, you have people that are just all about like, I need somebody else to help me. Hey, can you help me? Oh, if only these people could do this for me, so you find this like
a victim mentality almost
like a victim's mentality, and just like relying continuously on, and then that can become like almost like a parasitical thing too. Whereas here you become too alone and isolated. So I think that what you're suggesting is that you got to find that balance where, you have done your own internal work, because, if you haven't done the internal work, you're not going to be very, like fluid in your relationships. You might even bring, like you said in the beginning of the conversation, hurt people, right? You will bring that to your business relationships, to your individual relationships. So what I'm hearing is that the work you're doing is to allow people to get more awareness around their own patterns of behavior, of thought, and through that awareness to help them, realign themselves by to the vision that they truly are, what they truly want.
Yeah, and I would say that's the methodology that I use, right? That's how I take people from A to B. It's you help them see their patterns that are not serving them. But the result when you work with any coach, a good coach, should be that you're happier, you're more at peace, you're more calm. In the case of, a business coach, you have more clients, you have more revenue, more profit. In the case of a fitness coach, your body starts to respond to the training. You're healthier, you have more energy. In the coach of a relationship coach, you're finding more and more appropriate partners for your life, right? Ideally, your life partner, right? So yeah, that's what's possible with coaching, right? So and I've had wonderful coaches my entire life help me really get what I want too. And I still work with a coach every 2 weeks. I believe in coaching so much that I don't think I will ever stop.
Okay, so it's a two-way thing. It's not just that you are helping people; other people are also helping you, and that it's a process of
I learn as much from my clients as they learn from me. They don't maybe know that, but it's the same with no, I don't mind that they hear that. That's it's pedagogy, right? It's a two-way street where we're learning through the process of teaching, right? All of us.
Yeah, and that brings me to Feynman. That's what Feynman says. Like it's unless you can teach what you're learning to a little, he says 5-year-old or something, you really don't understand it yet.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, had a saying that until I can explain the counter argument better than my opponent, I shouldn't really talk about it at all, right? So he's saying you better understand your side of the argument and the other side in as much detail as you need to sort of speak on the level of your not opponent maybe, but the person on the other side of the argument. Right?
Man, that's so rare.
I like that.
That's so rare.
It's almost unheard of, right? It's almost unheard of.
That's like you find that like old academics or something, when you read like some of these old books and you're like, oh my God, this guy he convinces you of all this thing. And then the next chapter is that he's going to demolish that entire thing,
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's so fascinating. But that also shows you that the depth of someone's personality, so, okay, let me ask you this. So now the work you're doing do you find that because humans can also, because this is a more specific coaching related question. So when you help these people and through your interactions, through, their changes and results that they start to notice, do you think that they attribute some of that to the coaching, or, because I've also heard from coaches where it's like, hey man, I do all this work and then in the end they do better. They're like, what do they need the coach for?
You know what? I don't focus on that at all. So some clients, they're incredibly effusive. And at the end of 3 months, they're like, I can't believe like my life is completely shifted. I had one woman who we worked together about 10 or 12 sessions, and she had got out of an abusive marriage. She had moved cities. She bought a house. She changed careers, and all in the positive direction, right? And she recognized that it was the coaching that helped her make those changes. And there are other clients that, they come into my life for maybe 3 months and then or less, and then they disappear, right? And I don't know how they've fared, but I do believe that the work we're doing is valuable, and every conversation you have with everybody, not just a coach, but especially coaches, will shift your trajectory in some way, right? And so I'm trying hard, and this is a lesson for me to learn too, is I'm detaching from the outcome. I'm letting go of my expectations. I'm focusing instead on the process and the systems and what I put into it, not what comes out of it, right? Because I think when we focus on outcomes, whether it's I want to make $1 million by Christmas, or I want to find my life partner tomorrow, I want to be pregnant, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you cannot control that, right? It's that come back to the Stoic philosophy. What can you control? Your thoughts, your words, your actions. Everything else outside of your control. Everything anyone else does, the weather, what the universe does, out of your control. So don't bother. Only focus on what you can put into it, right? So I focus in coaching and in my life on what I can control, which is my thoughts, actions, words, right? Or at least I try to. I'm not always successful, but I'm doing my best.
Right. It's a process. And I mean, honestly, dude, like we're coming to almost the conclusion of our talk, but I wanted to add another weighty reason to your argument, which is that even like, because one of the things is we can't control it, and the other one is that those things are not really the reasons that actually bring us the happiness that we're seeking in the first place. For instance, like you mentioned somebody who wants $1 million or goodies or things and cars, and but those all stand for something else. Those are like we're seeking something else, and it's the process of evolving to be to be deserving of those things, but to evolve into the being that then attracts those things. Is the process that gives you the nice feeling, and it's the feeling that people want, but we mistake that for the end result often, and I think that's really, really important. That's something that we all learn through pain, after, because even once you get that car or that relationship, it's not the be all end all of everything. It's not like, okay,
you usually
now
find
that
it's empty, and it's there's another thing that you actually want, like you're saying. So I got a question for you. What is the ultimate goal of life?
What is the ultimate goal of life?
No, it's no easy question, but like what after you get the car and the woman and the experience, what is the actual ultimate? What are we pursuing?
It's interesting, like I think it was the Hitchhiker's Galaxy or one of those Isaac Asimov books, and he's like, "What's the meaning of life?" And then out comes 42.
42, yeah.
So maybe it's 42.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what we want. It's 42. Yeah. Now becomes what's the actual question. So I don't know the answer, but I think it has something to do with the concept of enlightenment. Really just understanding something, and you can't put this into words. You can't define it. I don't know what it is, but I think we're all moving in that direction. But I also think that you don't just get there. There are no shortcuts to enlightenment. You have to do all of the life things that in the material world, right? So, for example, even criminals, they need to do the crime to get to the enlightenment. There's no shortcut. They can't not do the crime and move into working a corporate desk job first. They are all on this path. It's the right path for them. There's a lesson to learn. Until you learn that lesson, you can't go to the next lesson, right? No matter where you are, who you are in life. I think that's the agreement that the universe has with us.
That's so interesting, dude. Like, that's Buddha had this guy, Ungli Mala. I don't know if you've heard this story, but he was this big. He was like a serial killer. So he had killed over 200 people. It's a long story. We don't have a lot of time left, but ultimately he becomes one of the disciples of the Buddha, and like the story is incredibly moving, because nobody thought, like, people were worried for their lives and stuff, and Buddha went up to, he's like, I'm gonna go look for this guy, and then eventually, once he became a monk, and he would go to different cities to beg, and different people might recognize him, and he would, instead of getting alms, he would get beaten up. And so he would get beaten up, and then he would come to the Buddha and be like, oh, I got beaten up again today. And he's like, this is your karma. You got to work it out. You know, so it reminds me of what you said, like even the criminal has to go through the process to get to the other side, you know. In terms of like I think the ultimate meaning, I think you really kind of knocked on the right door there for me, because, you know, the one person in my life that I think that comes closest to that is my grandfather, my mom's father. He's like 80 something, and he's just written a book, and he's working on another book, and but one thing I noticed in him is that he's very patient man. He's very diligent, and he's always working on something. He's improving somehow, you know. He's either learning a language, or he's learning a new craft. You know, he went to medical school in his 60s. Like he's just always in the and he's not he doesn't have that panicking energy where he's like, yeah, I got to do this, because he's like near death. You know, he makes jokes about it all the time. He's like, you know, he's like, by the time I got wise, it's time to die. You know, he's like, you know, I think
that's the ideal, right? You wouldn't want to get wise at 20 and then just ride out the rest of your years, I suppose.
So I think it's evolution. It's that feeling of that resistance is overcome, that we are learning, that we're growing, and then sharing it with people also. Like you said, like, you know, it's the universe or the way nature is set up is that when you do something for a large number of people that benefits them, you get rewarded. You know, unfortunately, sometimes you don't see it in your lifetime. You know, certain people will see it in a few lifetimes. Like, you know, like,
right.
You know, like their work is just not understood right away, or whatever the case might be. But I think that those two, like continuous evolution and then serving people through whatever you're learning, give you that very, very good feeling that then, you know, is what really humans are after in some sense.
Yes,
you know, but it doesn't sound as sexy as like, you know, like the car or the bikini chicks or whatever the hell, you know, at least from a male perspective. But
if you want to move in the direction of enlightenment, you know, a lot of people, they probably do need to go through the phase of, you know, being obsessed with material things, chasing sex or relationships, amassing material wealth. You know, none of that is wrong. That's not wrong. It's not less spiritual. That is the spiritual process. You going and making $1 million, that's a spiritual practice. You doing a podcast, a spiritual practice. You picking up your dog shit off the street is a spiritual practice. It's all fodder for the growth and the evolution of your soul, spirit, inner being, whatever you want to call it. And you can't skip it, right? You can't skip the drug addiction. You can't skip the abusive relationships. You need to, I believe, you need to learn something from that before you progress.
I feel like you started out as Tony Robbins and you're finishing as Lao Tzu.
Well, I'm pulling pieces from all of my inspirations.
I feel like you know, you got the Taoism going right now. I love it. I really love it.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much.
I'm just a student.
Yeah, there you go. It's another great mentality. You know, I'm not sure if you've heard of Ali. He's a famous personality in Islam, and he was like a cousin of Muhammad. So it's not Muhammad Ali, the boxer. It's
gotcha.
the prophet, his cousin Ali. So he's known in Islam for a lot of like wise sayings, you know. And so one of the things that he talks about is some of the stuff that we covered today too. So one of the sayings I really love from him is like patience is of two kinds. Patience again, you know, like patience from things that you want, and patience from things that, you know, like towards things that are like difficult and challenging. Yes. And I think like one of the things that in our world right now that we see is just a very big lack of patience towards everything, you know, because you will get there. I mean, almost every dream I've had in my life surprisingly keeps coming true, you know, but
I've seen you grow and evolve at an amazing rate. And I'm just incredible. I'm inspired by the way you live. You know, you seem to have no limits or at least not outwardly any fears. You just go and do things and you're fully living life. You're an amazing example of a human being.
Oh, thanks, man. It hasn't been easy. And I think a big part of it is just that pain, you know, the pain, you got to cultivate the pain, you know, like you said.
Yes.
So
yes.
Michael, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy. You got the daughter. You got to take care of
Brother
the family.
Selman, it's been a joy, my friend. I appreciate you the invite, and I always love our conversations. Let's do it soon.